Okay, this video is a movie review of Gone with the Wind, and it is one of the greatest movies of all time. I had seen this, I think, when I was a teenager. I didn't understand it. I was too young to understand anything emotional at that time. The main star is Clark Gable, the lead, and Vivian Leigh as Scarlett O'Hara. He's Rhett Butler. I could not believe how great this movie was. It was beyond great. It was literally one of the all-time greatest movies of all time. It was magnificent. It was first released in 1939. The book was published in 1936. The movie was released in 1939. And it was like one of the first movies ever made in color. It's the highest grossing movie of all time once adjusted for inflation. And it's one of the best-selling books of all time. It really is fantastic. It really is incredible. I couldn't believe how good it was. I'm reading the book currently. The movie's 3.5 hours long, but the book is about 49 hours long in terms of audio CDs. I'm only on like CD number 7, so I got a long way to go in the book. The book is 10 times longer, more than 10 times longer than the movie. Here is Tara. Tara is the name of their farm plantation, and it's rather magnificent and beautiful. And the South did have a great sense of beauty and ethics. Beauty in terms of aesthetics. Okay, now here is Scarlett. Ethics is another issue entirely. Here is Scarlett, and Scarlett is the prima donna, spoiled brat. She's, half Irish. O'Hara is the name, a good Irish name. And she is the most beautiful woman in the county. All the men are in love with her. She could have her pick of the young bucks, and they huddle around her and want to chit-chat with her, and she considers them all a bunch of fools and plays with their emotions. This is her mammy, pretty much the nanny of Scarlett when she was young, okay? And I think her name is Hattie McDaniel. She won Best Supporting Actress Award. It was the first time a black woman ever won a Best Supporting Actress Award in Hollywood. The movie won like 8 Oscars, 10 Academy Awards. It truly is one of the greatest movies of all time. She's fantastic in the movie. Now, Scarlett is really in love with this guy. His name is Ashley Wilkes. He's a very intelligent fellow. He's got all these books. He's an intellectual. His whole family, the Wilkes family, is very intellectual. And one of the bizarre things about it is they're so intellectual that they think they're too smart for everybody else, and he only wants to marry their cousins. Quite often they marry their cousins. Okay, we won't get into all that. But he's a rather sophisticated guy, and he's a good guy. You like him. I like him. He is a good man. He's brave. He's noble. He went and, fought for the South. Their attitude was, look, the Yankees have come in and they're invading our state, they're invading our city, they're invading our town. Of course slavery is wrong. Of course slavery should be abolished. But it's also true that part of what was going on in the North was an attempt to get rid of states' rights, to take away the freedom of the people, okay? Now, here is the best person in the whole movie. This is Melanie Hamilton. So Ashley is in love with Melanie, and he marries her. And I can tell you something, I'm in love with Melanie. She is the perfect woman. She's the dream woman, all right? She's so good. She reminds me of my mother. She always does the right thing no matter what the situation is, and that's a sign of a great person. And I understand why he loved her. I love her too. I think all young people should watch this movie to see Melanie, to compare the difference between Melanie and Scarlett, okay? Scarlett's very entertaining. She's very beautiful, but she is a major pain in the butt. Let's see, what else can we say about the movie? This movie was unique in terms of the fact that it's mostly about women. Usually when I read a book, the man is the hero. The women are in the background. The book is written by a man, and it's about men. Look at almost all the greatest novels of all time other than Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and that's still largely about a man, even though it's written by a woman. They're almost all written by men, primarily about men. This book was especially about Scarlett and, of course, her relationships, and it was then also about Melanie, and I'll come back to that in a moment, but that's a big point. Margaret Mitchell is the author. She's an American lady who is a Southerner, a Southern belle from a very prominent family, and she's from Atlanta, where, Sherman's march destroyed the place, and where the movie is set in Atlanta. And she's like Scarlett in real life. She's very pretty, looks like Scarlett, real feisty, hot-tempered. Her first love of her life, her fiance, died in World War I. Then she had a bad marriage and was divorced. She was a dancer, rather scandalous. She dropped out of college, so she's very much like Scarlett. Scarlett was real spoiled, opportunistic, money-minded, and she just couldn't stop loving Ashley, even though he made it clear he did not want to be with her. And that created a lot of chaos and craziness in the movie. Like I said, Ashley Wilkes was sort of the epitome of a good Southern gentleman. And he was a kind, thoughtful, good guy. Rhett Butler was more mischievous, more clever, more street smart. That's Clark Gable. And he fell in love with Scarlett too, and he was so good. We'll come back to him in a sec, but I really like these. These guys were top-notch guys. But the person who I love the most is Melanie Hamilton Wilkes, who married Ashley. And the reason I say it is all kinds of situations in life are awkward, and a big, good person makes everything okay. And she repeatedly did that, even when it wasn't easy for her to do that. And what it reminded me of, she's sort of the female equivalent of Alyosha. Brothers Karamazov is one of the best novels of all time. The best novel of all time, Christmas Carol by Dickens. Number 2 would probably be Les Mis by Victor Hugo. Number 3 would be Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Quo Vadis, number 4. And this one's right up there. It's in the top 10. Gone with the Wind is in the top 10 of greatest novels of all time. But anyways, why am I telling you this? Because one of the things you ask yourself is, what did I learn from this movie? When you read Brothers Karamazov, what you learn is that Alyosha is the best way to be. Alyosha, he's always nice. He's always trying to do the right thing. And he smooths over all these complex situations to make things okay. I'll come back to him briefly later, but that's what Melanie does. So she's like the female equivalent of Alyosha. And those are the best people you could possibly meet in your life. If you find one of those, do whatever you can to maintain that relationship. So here's Melanie with Ashley, and it's just pure love, pure goodness. It's all beautiful. Now here is Scarlett. She's still in love with Ashley, even though he's married to Melanie, and she's always sneaking around trying to have a meeting with him. And he's very nice to her, but, he really should tell her to piss off. He can't completely tell her to piss off because there's a business arrangement between the two families, but she is sneaky. She's trouble. He never fools around with her in a physical way, but... And here's another picture of Scarlett, and I like this picture because it kind of reminds me of the Wicked Witch in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, where she says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And despite all her beauty, she's really not that good of a person. I really don't like Scarlett that much. Even though, yes, she's very funny, she's very entertaining, she's very feisty, she's very strong, determined. All of that is admirable. But, man, is she a troublemaker. You want to run in the opposite direction. Okay? For a wife, she reminded me a little of my wife, all in a bad way. All the bad things about my wife that I don't like. Okay? Except being top beautiful off the charts. Here's Margaret Mitchell in real life, who looks totally like Scarlett herself. And she was a hot-headed, kind of a crazy young lady, and she sort of settled down as she got older. She also had an experience where she was, jumping horses, and she injured her leg. That ends up being a big part of the movie. People get injured jumping horses over things. Here's just a picture of a cover from Brothers Karamazov, and there's the crazy father. Here's the brothers, and here's the story of the brothers, and this is a relevant point. So there was Ivan, who was a genius intellectual, but he became atheist for a while, and that sort of ruined his life. Atheism just destroys people. And most of them are phony liars. Other ones are trying to figure things out, but some of them are people who are truly confused, and it ruins their life. This was Dmitri, the hot-headed brother in Brothers Karamazov. And being a hothead and not being forgiving, he gets into fights and causes trouble, and it ruins his life. And here was Alyosha. Initially, he considers being a monk, and then he leaves, and he's mentored by Father Zosima. And then Alyosha is always trying to go around understanding people, doing the right thing, and being good. That's the way to try to be. He made everything good. You love Alyosha. He's the hero of Brothers Karamazov. And at first, the book entirely seems to be about the father, about the women, about Ivan the genius, but then you realize it's really about Alyosha. And that was Dostoevsky's son's name was Alyosha, and he died. It was very sad. But that's why it's one of the all-time greatest books of all time, because the lesson you learn from that book is Alyosha is the right way to be. And the lesson you learn from this book, I think the most important lesson is Melanie is how a woman should be. Melanie's perfect. I would kiss her feet. I love this lady so much. Like I said, she reminds me of my mother. That's the highest compliment I could give to a woman. Scarlett is trouble. Scarlett's funny. She's entertaining. She might be fun as a girlfriend for a little while, but she is trouble after trouble after trouble. Selfish, dishonest, greedy, opportunistic. Okay, and then the Civil War was, awful. America's worst war. Like 600,000 guys died, and that was like, if you adjust for population size, the greatest casualties ever for the USA in a war. And all kinds of stupid stuff. The Union Irish fought against the rebel Irish, and the whole thing was a sad disaster. Here's some Union guys at one of their cannons. Here is sort of, again, the idea of, the Irish fighting for the South against the Irish fighting for the North. What a disaster. How sad it was. I wish they could have resolved it peacefully. I wish that states' rights would be maintained. It's sad. Of course they had to get rid of slavery, of course. But, oh, what a sad story. We'll talk about this more some other time. I'll do a book review on Gone with the Wind later. But here is, General Sherman came through Atlanta and just burned things down. What, PED, the women, just evil. People don't give credit to the truth about both sides. Usually there's good and bad on both sides, as there strongly was in this case. The next thing is, this totally is, where this song comes from. That's the night they drove old Dixie down. And Joan Baez sings the best version of it. There's excellent movies. I'll put a link to it below. The movie here. Okay, and like I said, the South got wiped out in the Civil War. They just didn't have the industrial capacity to put up a real fight to the Union, which had endless soldiers. Because in general, the South has better soldiers than the North does. Those guys hunt all the time. That's what they do. So they were better, 1-to-1. But the Union had tons of guys, much more industrialized, able to sustain the situation. And it was the movie was just incredible. They showed all these casualties. There were all kinds of things about this movie that were just spectacular. The guy who did the movie, Selznick or something, the guy's a genius. Time after time, you'll look at this movie. It's like cinematically perfect, aesthetically perfect. This was a dramatic scene here where you got the silhouette of Scarlett, where after the Yankees had destroyed the South, including destroyed much of her home or her hometown, she was struggling to, get back on her feet to reestablish Tara, the farm. And they went through a time where she was very hungry, like almost starving. And she, stood up, put her fist in the air and said, "As God is my witness, I will never go hungry again." She was very determined and tough. And that's, some things you like about her. And you like the fact she's very funny, too. But this was a big scene. And this movie coming out in 1939, this was following, hard upon the Great Depression, when a lot of people had been hungry and were starving. And that's a big thing of what the movie is like. On the one hand, it kind of is a throwback. It takes you back to the 1800s because of the Civil War, and everything is sort of in that context. But on the other hand, it's really largely, showing the life of the Americans after the Great Depression. That was a big thing that people resonated with. And I spoke to a Russian lady, and what a Russian lady says, Gone with the Wind is like the equivalent of War and Peace written by Leo Tolstoy about Russia. But I would say no. There was a lot of ethics built into Gone with the Wind. It's magnificent. It's a moral film. It's an ethical film. There's a lot of stuff, and it's historically quite accurate about a lot of stuff. Versus Tolstoy, I think, is, he's got, as Nabokov had described him, he's just really good at describing things as they actually happen, but he's an amoral jerk. I mean, read the Intellectuals chapter on him by Paul Johnson. So anyways, I wouldn't put anything by Tolstoy in the same category as this book or any of the top 20 novels of all time. But this was a magnificent scene. Here is Rhett Butler and Scarlett when they were getting along, walking around at Tara. And Rhett Butler, he tried so hard to make things work. He wanted things to work. He did everything he could to make things work. But Scarlett would not stop fighting and being obnoxious. I think she has cluster B personality, which sounds like B for BITCH, but it also means a personality where the woman's always angry no matter what the man does. The woman's always overreacting to minor things and always causing fights. And I think in a marriage, what both people need to do is just relax and say, look, we got to do what's right for the kids. Let's try to get along. Let's not fuss about little stuff. And in a marriage, too, everything, I don't think anything should be 50-50. I think everything should be 100-0, 100-0, 100-0. What I mean by that is if you try to go 50-50, you'll always end up arguing 60-40. You just go 100. You do this, I'll do this. You do this, I'll do this. And then it works. But anyways, it's like, you feel like cheering for them. You know, they've been through so many disastrous situations. He was in prison because he fought also for the South. She had seen so many sad things happen. Her mother died, her father died, and more stuff. I'm not even going to say all the sad things that happened. So here it's like you want to cheer for him. Yes, you guys got together. Stay together. Be nice to each other. But Scarlett kept screwing things up, and it would piss me off, and it would remind me sometimes of women who I've known how they behave when they ruin situations that are good. And here's Scarlett crying. By the way, several of her children died. Several of her first two husbands died, and the second one got killed because of her. I don't want to spoil the movie any more than that, but I'll just tell you, Scarlett did some bad things, and you know, she really did some bad things, and she really caused a lot of suffering for other people. She's selfish, entitled, and like I said, I don't like Scarlett that much, even though she's a great actress and she was an incredible star in the movie and she's very entertaining. That's all true, but she is not a good role model for women. Here's another scene where they're looking out on Tara, and they're pretty happy to have Tara after all the disaster to Tara. Here was a passionate, intense scene between Rhett Butler carrying Scarlett up the stairs. I won't even go into the details of that scene, but I'm telling you, this movie is a tearjerker. I actually cried at the end of this movie. I don't usually cry. I don't usually even take movies seriously. I haven't been to a Hollywood movie in over 20 years because I think they all stink. They're all like special effects with no emotion, action flicks for retards, okay? This movie, it's pulling at your heartstrings from start to finish. It's magnificent. It's great. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. It's so good. It's unbelievable. Okay, here is, you know, Rhett Butler. Rhett Butler also, he saved Scarlett. Scarlett was in some deep trouble, and he was a heroic, brave guy, and he was good. And she should have been more appreciative of him. Oh, here's another really sad scene where Scarlett is just acting like a jerk. She falls down the stairs, and she lost one of her pregnancies. That was really a sad scene. Here's Rhett Butler. He's trying to be a good father. He's trying to do everything he can for the family, for the kids. He's willing to take a little bit of humiliation that goes along with a man trying to make everything work for a family. And Scarlett was screwing it up. Don't get me wrong, he did some stupid things too, but his heart was always in the right place, whereas Scarlett's was not always in the right place. And it screwed things up. And I can tell you, you know, when a man tries to make things work for the family, the woman should cut him a little slack and let things work. Because I can remember too, I'd be coming home from work at, 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. I'd have my little one day off on the weekend trying to do something with my kid because I'm not home. Okay, I'm always working, and I would hate it if the wife would like destroy what I had, my one little day of the week to try to make something work for the kids. And then she would spoil it. That would piss me off because, it was a precious time. The kids spend tons more time with their mothers than their fathers. Fathers are working all the time typically. Here's one of the big scenes in the movie where Scarlett had acted like a jerk and he had had enough of her, and so he's leaving her, and she says, well, what am I going to do? And he says, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. It was a great scene. The way it was delivered in the movie was perfect. And here's Scarlett crying when, her and Rhett Butler had another breakup, and she's crying, but she says, well, tomorrow is another day, and that's a great line. So, and where does the phrase civilized gone with the wind come from? It comes from the South with the Civil War and, General Sherman's march through. They're burning everything up. OPED, the women and all this other stuff. The Southern civilization was destroyed and it was gone with the wind. So don't get me wrong. There was a lot of bad things about the South. There's a lot of bad things about the North. There's a lot of good things about the South. There's a lot of good things about the North. And it's too bad they couldn't peacefully have set the slaves free and have everybody get along. But I'm telling you, this movie, everyone should see this movie. It's magnificent. So anyways, I hope that was interesting.